Hey everybody, and thank you for joining me today in live stream number 36. Today is July 28th. It is 2017. It's Friday. We made it. 5 live streams this week. Whew. I don't know about you, but it did seem like it was a long week, this one. Still got people trickling in here for the live stream here. So if you're watching this, you're watching the recording right now. We're about 20 seconds in. Don't forget, down in the description area is my email address, lars.christensen@autodesk.com. If there's anything that you would like to see for topics on these live streams, just don't wait, man. Send it to me. Love to see what kind of things you would like me to cover here. Again, these live streams, as the garbage truck is coming, and he is going to compact all the garbage right next to my window. That's what he does every Friday. These live streams, they're pretty casual, as you've probably already seen. I'm kind of like just yapping away here, but they're meant to be about, I don't know, 15, 20, 30 minutes long, and just kind of like want to share a little bit of Fusion 360 kind of knowledge with you guys. Hope to add a little bit of value. I can see we got Jacob in here. Jacob, happy Friday, man. We made it. That is awesome. Today's topic is your geometry selection when it comes to 3D selection with CAM. So if you're not into CAM, this live stream, yeah, take the weekend off early, just to go and relax, have a cold one. Today is all about CAM, and specifically about 3D toolpaths, because if you do a lot of 2D and you're switching into 3D, then it's a little different animal. And actually, I remember when years ago, before Fusion 360, 3D machining was really, really hard. Luckily, it's not that anymore. It is different. That's what we're going to cover today. All right, one thing I just got to show you. So I've had a few people who have asked me if I could please categorize or give them like a playlist of my live streams, because we're getting up. This is 36. We're getting up to a few, and people are kind of like looking on how to find stuff, and like I said in a YouTube comment, if I was gonna start all over, I would probably do things different. But with I think I have like 180 videos now on the channel. I'm not gonna sit down and try to kind of like write them all on a piece of paper. But what you can do is, if you go to the playlist, I do try to put things in somewhat the right playlists, and the live streams are living in their own. And one trick I want to show you, so that right now there is 36 in here. One trick on a Windows machine, if you hold down Control and F on any website, you can search on that website. Here we go, the garbage truck is compacting outside the window. I'm just gonna yell louder. I don't know if the microphone picks it up or not, but if you do Control F on any website, you can search any content on that website. So for example, search STL, you will see will take me to live stream number 10, where we talked about STL files. Or if you want to type in direct editing, you will see that it's highlighted down here that number 15 we did that. So just be aware of that with Control F, you can go ahead and you can find that. All right, enough of that. Let's get in and talk about today's topic. What is your geometry selection tool within 3D CAM? So, one thing I wanted to show was, people sometimes ask me, how do you model things up? Don't forget that you have the play button down here, how you can see how you model things up. So this one here, I just extruded up this big block. Then I created a plane that went through the corners. Now remember, there was one live stream where we talked about that you can do plane through 2 edges. So I literally just selected, if I click on here, I literally just selected 2 edges, and then I did a revolve cut. I drew on that face. I drew this little shape and then I revolve that around. So that was how I kind of like got this odd shape here. Added a couple of chamfers, and then I kind of like sketched up a couple of holes, because we're going to talk about that. And I also extruded a rectangle through, and then I added a couple of chamfers on that. So there's no rules when it comes to how you model things up. You can do really whatever you want. Just remember that. All right, let's talk a little bit about CAM. That's what the whole handle is about. So going into the CAM environment, and I have created a setup right on the center here. Just selected that model here. And what I'm gonna, many times when I'm working with this, we're gonna start out with a 3D adaptive clearing. I'm not gonna go into too much detail about this one because it is really about selection. I rather want to show it in some of the other selection tools in here. I'm just gonna select the tool, and I have a 1/2 inch flat end mill in here. And actually what I many times do when I'm working in here is I just select my tool, and then I click OK and see what I get. So a good habit, if you're new to this kind of work, is to select your tool and then just click OK and see what you get, and then go in and edit things. That is kind of like a way that you can prevent changing a bunch of things and then don't know what the heck you changed, and then it can be hard. So in this one here, I'm going to go back in here to this operation. I can see one thing that stood out is that the maximum roughing step down is only 400 thousandths. One of the great things about adaptive clearing is we can use a lot more of the flute length. Now that maybe is another live stream topic. I'm going to change it to 1 inch. And then I want to show one thing. If you're finding yourself always going in and changing certain parameters, like this maximum roughing step down, just so you know, you can actually right click and you can say that you want to make it default. So I put in 1 inch and I'm right clicking inside of that field, and I can say I want to make it default. Now from now on, it will always be 1 inch, and I don't have to check that anymore. Same thing go like if you do or don't want stock to leave on. If you always find that you're always adding 25 thousandths to this, you can go in here, right click, and you can make that default. That's a nice little CAM trick right there. All right, I really don't want to play too much around with the adaptive here. So I'm just really just going to leave that here. What I want to go in and talk about is more about the finishing toolpath. And for this example here, I'm going to use the parallel to talk about your selection tools when it comes to machining. So I'm going to select the parallel cut. And I'm going to go in and select a ball and mill, 1/4 inch ball and mill. It doesn't really matter. What we want to talk about today is some of the options that is in here. Because I think that this is where it's a lot different than working with 2D. In 2D, you always go in and select your edges and all these different, you're kind of like creating like a tool boundary with edges and pockets and things like that. In here, it's a little bit different. So what you have, so I just selected the tool, right? And I haven't changed anything. Again, my recommendation is actually going in and hit OK and see what you get. So this is actually not too terrible when we're looking at a finishing toolpath here for a parallel cut. This is like parallel cut is normally what I will start out with. But let's go in and look at some of the different options there is in here. So I'm going to right click and edit. And the first one that is selected in here is silhouette. Now if you hover over here, you actually get a little box where you can read a little bit more specifically about the different ones. Now silhouette, I think the best way for me to kind of like explain that is, think about like if you had a flashlight in your hand and you were kind of like shining down light from the top of your machine, or the Z-axis, the C-axis plus, and you kind of like had a light that was pointing down. I just gotta show you this. I'm literally sitting here pointing down like this while you can't see me pointing down. If you had a light that is pointing down from the top to your part, that is what the what the silhouette tool does. That's how it's projecting the tool path down. So like a spotlight going right down. And if you're looking at it, you can kind of see, if you're looking from the top, you can kind of see how it is projecting down on all machining surfaces, but it's avoiding the holes over here, and it's also avoiding these edges here. Now, if we go in, right-click, edit, and we see that we also have something called bounding box. So if we select the bounding box and hit OK, and go back to the top, you will actually see that with our tool here, it's like a rectangular box projected over our entire stock. Now it is still breaking up the hole, but you will actually see that it will fill out corners where there's no material. So if I didn't have these chamfers on it, then you will see they were coming right out to the edge. But because it's using a boundary box, it actually machines those. You can see how the toolpath go down. I'm going to talk about the boundary box in just a second, because there is some neat things about it. Go back in again, and then the third option in the parallel is the selection tool, what actually does let you select areas. So one thing could be to select this inner edge, and nice thing about this is that it shows up in this green. If I just select this inner edge, you will see that now the toolpath is contained within that selection boundary, what is kind of handy. Now, another thing that can make this nice is that if you're selecting two chains, it will actually be within those two chain selection. So if I add another chain by here, now it's going to be between those two chains. I completely changed where I was machining. With the first selection, it was within that, but between the two selection, I am now machining between the two, what can be kind of handy. All right, I'm going to go back here again. I'm going to exit out of this. I'm going to go back to silhouette and just hit OK, so we can just reset back to that point there. That's kind of like the default you are getting at. Now, it's also worth, well, there's a couple of things that is worth showing you. There's also another thing that is nice to know, and that is you can actually use sketches as your boundary. So if I go into the modeling environment, right click, say create a sketch, and let's just do I don't know, an ellipse or something, maybe. Do an ellipse like this. So now this sketch is sitting up here. If I go back into CAM and go back into our parallel, edit it and say selection, and I select that as my boundary, you will now see that that is now the boundary. So you can actually use sketches as your boundary. Actually, also now I'm talking about it, you can actually use sketches to drive pretty much any toolpath if you didn't know that. If I go in here, let's get rid of go ahead and edit the sketch here. Let's get rid of that one for a second. And let's sketch a rectangle over here. You can, just so you know, you can drive 2D sketches with if we're doing like 2D geometry, just so you know. So you can go in and do a contour on a sketch over here and actually drive just on a sketch. Huh. If you didn't know that, you might be like, whoa, wait a minute. I don't even need a 3D shape to be able to machine in Fusion. You actually don't. All right, never mind. Let's get rid of that. Now I'm getting sidetracked. I hope this is useful, guys. Let's get back into the parallel here. And let's go over and look at, go back to silhouette. The other thing you have over here that you should know about is underneath here, tool containment. So right now it's set by default to center, what means that all your tool path is going to machine to the center of the cutter. So if I go up here, go normal 2, and we go in and say we're going to do a tool path, and let's just go somewhere around here. All right, when you get to the edge, the tool will actually only go to the center of the tool path. And that is controlled by the second setting down here, tool center versus tool inside boundary and outside boundary. So inside boundary means that now the diameter is controlling, not the center. What means that when we go in to simulate this, you will see that now we are not surpassing this edge with the diameter here. And then you probably can figure out what the last one, outside, what that will do. That will actually allow the tool to literally go past its boundaries. I normally just start out with tool on center. Generally speaking, I don't silhouette and tooling on center. That is a pretty good starting point. You can also add additional offsets in here. What sometimes can be nice, that you can extend the area of the machining surpassed its boundaries. So if we're leaving it here on center, we're back to the default. If we go in and we edit it and we add an inch, you will see that now it's gonna go past, right? Now you can say, well, why wouldn't you just do tool outside boundary? Well, I can't control that with a specific dimension, but that's what that does. The next one here is a function that you should definitely know about, and that is contact point boundary. What it really means is when you're machining 3-axis with a ball end mill, you're kind of like tangent. I'm trying to leave my mouse right on this image. There we go. I'm removing my hand from the mouse. When you are machining with a ball end mill, you're constantly having a tangency to that ball end mill, right? That's why we're using a ball end mill, not a flat end mill, is because we kind of like want to follow with a smooth cusp of a cutter. If you look at the bottom picture where it says disabled and enabled, what the contact boundary will do when it's enabled is that the tool will stay tangent to the surface it's machining and not necessarily going past that. So without it, let's hit OK. That's the default. And I'm not quite sure how well it's going to show up right here as it's machining. Maybe it's better if I go in and do a containment. This maybe not be the best example I have you here, but I will try. If I do a containment here, right now we don't have it checked, what means that the cutter is kind of like working on a center point calculation algorithm. And if you're looking at these, like the last 3 passes here, you'll see that they're like very short. Let's go in and turn it on. And you will now see that the tool is actually surpassing where it was before. And that's because the tool is actually more concerned about staying tangent to the path. It many times will, I don't know how I didn't look up here. Many times it'll show better up on edges when you're hitting sharp edges up here. Let me just, like I said, I'm not trying not to spend too much time preparing for these because I got other work to do. So some of this is a little off cuff. Well, it might look the same. But down here it definitely shows up different. And what it is again, if we go in and simulate this, and I'm sure that there's some, there's probably some developer who could give me a lot better information that I'm giving you right now. But what happens on the first pass is that the tool right now is concerned about, because we had that add selection, it's concerned about the center point to that edge where the loop kind of like comes down, the dome that kind of comes down. If we go in and we use the content point boundary, we kind of like overriding that whole tool path to center, but telling the software, hey, it's okay, be more concerned about the tangency of the tool. So when the tool comes down, you will see that actually now it goes all the way down here and is more concerned about the tangency. I hope that that is a good explanation of it. What I would recommend you to do is, if you never played around with it, next time you're programming something in 3D, try to turn it on and see how the ball end mill is using its tangency. All right, 20 minutes already. I'm running out of time. So that's this contact boundary here. It's definitely something that is important to know is there. And I should have put down in the description area, Rob Lockwood, if you don't know him, he actually did a search Rob Lockwood or email me and I'll send you to him. He did a video series where he talked about this very well. So shoot me an email if you want more about this. Contact only is another interesting thing. Normally I use it with a boundary box. If I select boundary box, and you will see what it does is it's trying to machine over holes. So that can be kind of handy if you're doing molds and things like that. If I hit OK with the boundary box here, you will see that, like we said, it machines past the area here. But of course, the heights tab, we can control that. So if I'm saying, in this case here, I really don't want it to machine past this face. Okay, you will see that the boundary box now is just machining to this edge here. If I go in and I uncheck contact only, then you will now see that it actually machines over the holes, even though there's nothing there. So contact on, when we turn it off, right, we're kind of like telling the software you can actually machine past the where there is stock. So that's another one you should definitely be aware of. I hope this is kind of helpful. Couple of other things that can be nice to know about is the slope command in here. So by default it's 0 to 90 degrees. So if I hit OK to that, that's the default. It machines everything from 0 to 90 degrees. Now, if we, for example, went in and we changed that to, let's say, 15 degrees, now it's only machining from 0 to 15. You will see that it's avoiding all this area here. Now, why would I ever do that? It's kind of nice if you're using multiple toolpaths in a combination of one another. So, for example, if I went in here and I decided that after the parallel cut, what is really good for these flat areas, I made a video about my favorite toolpath when it comes to 3D. Again, search for it or send me an email if you would like to see it. If I, for example, added a contour cut here to these two, you will see the contour toolpath here is taking care of all this area, where the parallel now only taking care of this. So in combination, the two are really covering up these areas very nice. But if I didn't have my slope on, whoops, sorry, wrong button. If I didn't have my slope on, then the parallel cut, the first cut, would actually touch areas that the contour would come and clean up. And the areas where the parallel is not doing a very good job here is like these steep areas. You can see we have no toolpath on those. So that's why you would use slope, for example. That's probably all the good uses for it. Rest machining, I think we've talked about that in the past, how we can clean things up in there. Search for that in the live stream. I'm pretty sure we talked about rest machining. Tooling orientation is when it comes to having a multi-axis machine, so like a fourth or fifth axis, 3+2. And then I wanted to show you the modeling tab here, because this is kind of neat. So in this case, we did our setup, and our silhouette is really just throwing toolpath on anything that is in the setup block, right? That is that the whole part is what the silhouette does. The next two options, model and avoid touch, actually gives you some flexibility on if you want to override that. So with model, you can actually go in and exclude the setup model, and you can actually select just faces if you want to. It's kind of wacky. So now I'm actually, with this model tab, I'm actually telling Fusion that forget about the setup. I only want to do these areas on the model. And boom, now it's only concentrating on that. Woohoo! That's actually very handy, right? Another option for that could be, if I uncheck that, is to use avoid touch surfaces. Now without it on, the default section, we got this. This is what we have been seeing all the time. If you go in here, you do have the avoid touch surfaces in here, and where we could say, well, we want to avoid certain areas. So if we, for example, say we want to avoid this area, the big area right here, and we hit OK, then it will avoid that area. That is one way to do that. You can also go in the other direction and say, I want to use touch surface, and now it would only put on where there's a, if this one is checked, it would only put toolpath where there's surface that has been highlighted. So that is a couple a couple of different options. So just to kind of like go through that one more time, you actually have a lot of cool options in here. I can select an area with the selection tool. So now I'm back to default, just using the selection tool, and it will only machine this area. Undo, go back to silhouette. Or you could go into model and say I will only want this area. Or you can go in and do either touch surface, which is the easiest, and just say only that surface, get the same result. Or you can go in and, of course, avoid that, select everything but that one surface, and you will get kind of like the same kind of result, right? The biggest difference between the different ones are actually how it's controlling the exit out, in and out of here. But I hope that this kind of gave you a little bit of an idea about the different options. But again, I would really, my advice, for whatever that's worth, would be to go in, select your tool. This is the default right here. Well, actually, I have my heights tab. Let's go back to model bottom. This is the default. Select your tool, go in and hit OK, and then look at what you get, and then go in and play with each of these settings, each settings individual, till you kind of like nail it down. But I hope that this was helpful. This was about half an hour of a Friday to end out the week. I hope that this is kind of useful, talking a little bit about this 3D cam. I would say that we can definitely do more. We can definitely do more sections on 3D cam. I think that a lot of people probably would like to see that. You let me know. Send me an email. Look down in the description area for that, for sure. Yeah, it's not that hard. If you were like me, that you used CAM software, 15, 20 years ago, this was really hard. And like, it was just really confusing. My job is to try to make this less confusing, and I hope that today was somewhat of a start of it. All right, guys, I am really appreciating for you guys taking the time out of your busy day to either enter the live stream here, which is awesome. I can see we got people in here, or even if you're watching the recording, really appreciate that. And if you like what you see, do the thumbs up. If you don't, thumbs down. That's perfectly fine. Send me any comments or topics you would like by using my email address down in the description area of this YouTube video. I'm going to do like I normally do. Livestream 36 is about done. Hope to see you Monday for number 37. I'm going to end the broadcast, so if you're watching the recording, thank you so much. And I'm going to jump in the chat and say hi to everybody who's in there. Thank you so much, everybody. Really appreciate it, and enjoy that weekend. Thank you.